Okay, it is Tuesday, December 24th of 2024, so Merry Christmas Eve. Another late recording. The weekend was just so busy that I didn't even realize that I forgot to record until yesterday midday. So, two things that I want to talk about. Oh, what is that? Anyway, two things I want to talk about in this video. The first one, and I think the shorter, more mundane one, is some work drama. Absolute craziness. So, for a very long time, I've worked not with this guy, but his desk is maybe 5 feet from mine. Even though we're very separate in terms of our roles and responsibilities, and I always had a very positive impression of it. He was very professional. Always seemed very put together. So I always thought that he was a great worker. And today, out of nowhere, he comes into the office of the office that I'm having a meeting in with the trust officer I work with, and tells us he's leaving, and tells us that he hasn't told his supervisor yet. So that was a little strange, and the next thing I know, he's walking out the door, same day resignation, and then leaves. So I go to talk to my buddy, who is his boss, and boy, it sounds like that situation was crazy because for like the last year and a half at least, he's just been an absolutely trash employee. Um, not missing deadlines and not communicating about it. Um, uh, not talking, not reaching out to clients when he's supposed to. And I guess it got so bad that when his boss was on a trip recently, he had some of his biggest customers call and say, "Wow, this guy is worthless. Like, he can't do anything." It's like, oh. But the real kicker of it was, and I didn't realize this until Gabby pointed it out for me, but or I didn't realize an element. I'll explain. Um, when my buddy was telling me that he left, he pulled me into his office and told me to close the door for a minute because I guess when this guy quit, he went directly to HR and said that there were some conversations that we're having that were borderline inappropriate for work. So it sounds like he really tried to throw his boss and I under the bus because we definitely have conversations, and if you aren't morally aligned with him and I, you might think of those things as close to the line. So fortunately, HR pulled my buddy into their office, and we're like, "Hey, this guy just quit. Here's what he said on the way out. What's your take on that?" And my buddy fortunately was like, "Look, um, you know, we've been documenting that his poor performance now for the better part of a year. He just finished a performance review that was overwhelmingly negative, um, making mistakes that are just unacceptable." And he's like, "I'm really confident this is just a disgruntled employee who is trying to scorch the earth on the way out." And HR, I guess, was like, "Okay, yeah, that's kind of the impression we got." But still, what Gabby then pointed out to me was that, like, one of the last things this employee said to me was, "Hey, good luck with the baby and good luck with the move to Wyoming." And then the next thing he did that involved me was go to HR and basically say, "Hey, you should fire this guy." And I mean, I know he was trying to get Nick fired or trying to get Nick in trouble, but he didn't even consider the fact that that threw me directly under the bus. So, I don't know. I think that's. Said Gabby was like, "That's a real dick move." And I was like, "Yeah, I've completely lost respect for him at this point. Like, that is a. I mean, don't get me wrong. I hated the fact that he wouldn't take responsibility for any of the um, stuff he was failing on. But Anyway, so that's insane. But it sounds like they were really glad to be rid of him. You know, they were his the president of our department, I guess, called my buddy and was because his this employee didn't even tell my buddy, who was his direct supervisor, that he was leaving. So our president got a phone call from HR telling her that he had left. And so she calls my buddy and says, "Hey, do you have any news for me?" And he's like, "I don't think my fiance is pregnant." So yeah, that was wild. So, but anyway, moving away from that subject, something else that I want to talk about, touch on very briefly, just given that it's the holiday season, is my thoughts on the movie The Santa Claus. Danny Gonzalez made a really funny video on it where he talks about how strange it is that the Santa Claus is decided who the Santa Claus is picked by whoever happens to put on the jacket after the previous Santa has died or fallen off the roof or something like that. And I think that it is much more fun in concept, or it's much more realistic to think of the Santa Claus, quote unquote, as a curse. Because, stop for yourself and think. If you were told that you were only going to have one vehicle for the rest of your life, would you pick a sleigh? I don't think so. I mean, you might. There's certainly some of you out there that will. But I would say on average, people aren't going to pick a sleigh. If you were told that your primary outfit color scheme for the rest of your life was going to be red and white, you might not be happy about that. Because you have different color preferences. And so I think that in reality, in the movie, it's not so much that Scott, the main character Scott, was responsible for the previous Santa's death. And I know there's a show that makes a lot of this invalid, but I'll go into why I don't think that's the case later. Oh crap, I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, so it's not so much that Scott intervened and pushed him off the roof. It was that the curse was through with the previous guy who was Santa. It's like this guy's been through long enough where his personality and his sense of self have essentially been overridden by the spirit of Santa Claus. And I believe that that's the case also because Mrs. Claus is nowhere to be found in that first movie. The former Mrs. Claus. So that tells me that unless the way that it works, which would just seem very weird to me, is that if Santa falls off the roof, both him and Mrs. Claus just suddenly fade away, then that tells me that I think the curse says, okay, hey, you're done, you've served your sentence, it's time for me to pick another joyless husk, and it's time for him to be Santa. And so it chose Scott, and it essentially overrode him. It gave him a year, essentially, where it sort of tortured him with these changes to his personality, and you get to watch his life fall apart as he becomes more and more connected to the spirit of Christmas. And so I know there's a show that talks about how all the previous Santas were spirits, but I think at that point, I think that's probably just the curse combating Scott's attempts to break it. So it's like his personality is starting to shine through, so the curse gives him like adventures that are more likely to keep him in line with the curse, so that it can continue torturing him and his wife. So anyway, I think that's all I've got to talk about. Hopefully I'll actually record a video this weekend as opposed to forgetting and doing it Tuesday morning. Christmas will be tomorrow, and then hopefully the weekend will be pretty slow. So, anyway, I'll see you next time. Bye.